This is Chapter 5, Module 3, Accessory Structures of the Integument and Injury Repair. The learning objectives of this module are 1. Describe the structures and function and growth of hair. 2. Describe the structures and function and growth of the nails. 3. Describe the various kinds of glands in the skin and list the secretions of those glands. 4. Describe the way in which the integumentary system helps to regulate body temperature. 5. Describe the steps of repair from injury to the skin. The accessory structures of the integument are the hair, hair follicles, sebaceous glands, sweat glands, and nails. The accessory structures are located in the dermis and project through the skin surface. Hair is an accessory organ of the skin made of columns of tightly packed dead keratinocytes found in most regions of the body. There are few hairless parts of the body, including the palms of the hands, soles of the feet, lips, and portions of the external genitalia, such as the labia minora and the glans penis. Hair helps to protect the body from UV radiation by preventing sunlight from striking the skin. Hair also insulates the body by trapping warm air around the skin, and hair is sensitive to light touch. The structure of hair can be broken down into 3 major parts: the follicle, root, and shaft. The hair follicle is a depression of epidermal cells deep into the dermis. Stem cells in the follicle reproduce to form the keratinocytes that eventually form the hair, while melanocytes produce pigment that gives the hair its color. Within the follicle is the hair root, the portion of the hair below the skin surface. The hair root is attached to the integument. As the follicle produces new hair, the cells in the root push up to the surface until they exit the skin. The hair shaft consists of the part of the hair that is found outside of the skin and is not attached to the integument. The hair shaft and root are made of 3 distinct layers of cells: the cuticle, the cortex, and the medulla. The cuticle is the outermost layer of keratinocytes. The keratinocytes of the cuticle are stacked on top of each other like shingles so that the outer tip of each cell points away from the body. The cuticle is the surface layer of the hair. Under the cuticle are the cells of the cortex that form the majority of the hair's width. The cortex is the middle layer of the hair. The spindle-shaped and tightly packed cortex cells contain pigments that give hair its color. The innermost layer of the hair, the medulla, is the central core of the hair and is not present in all hairs. When present, the medulla usually contains high pigmented cells full of keratin. When the medulla is absent, the cortex continues through the middle of the hair. An area called the hair bulb produces the matrix of the hair. The hair bulb is a layer of dividing basal cells that will eventually push the hair up and out of the skin. The hair papillae contain capillaries and nerves to supply the hair with nutrients, remove wastes, and monitor sensory output. As hair is produced, it is keratinized. The medulla will still contain flexible, soft keratin, whereas the cortex and cuticle outside contain hard keratin. The body has hair covering most external surfaces. Vellus hairs are the soft, fine hairs that cover the majority of the body's surface. Terminal hairs are the heavy, pigmented hair of the head, eyebrows, and eyelashes. Terminal hairs also appear after puberty, on the armpit and pubic areas, as well as the face and chest on males. When a follicle is inactive and the hair is not growing, the hair is called a club hair. When the follicle becomes active, it will then begin producing a new hair and the club hair is shed. Hair color is produced by melanocytes at the hair papillae. Hair color is determined by genes. The erector pillae are involuntary smooth muscles that are attached to the hair root. When the erector pillae muscles contract, they cause the hairs to stand up on end and produce goosebumps. The sebaceous glands, or oil glands, are holocrine glands that produce an oily substance called sebum. Sebum contains lipids and other ingredients that help to keep the skin lubricated and protected by inhibiting the growth of bacteria. A sebaceous gland releases its secretions into a duct that empties into the hair follicle. The sebum will then be eliminated through the hair follicle to the surface of the skin. Sebaceous follicles are sebaceous glands that discharge their secretions directly onto the surface of the skin through a pore. Sweat glands are also accessory structures of the integument. There are 2 types of sweat glands: apocrine glands and merocrine glands. Apocrine glands are found in the armpits, around nipples, and the groin. These glands secrete sticky, cloudy secretions into hair follicles. When these secretions break down, they produce odors. The secretions are released in response to a hormonal or nervous system signals. Merocrine sweat glands are more widely distributed on body surfaces, especially on the palms of the hands and soles of the feet. These glands discharge their watery secretions directly onto the skin surface. Merocrine gland secretions are the secretions that cause sensible perspiration. Water, salts, and organic compounds accompany the watery secretion and function to cool the skin, get rid of water and electrolytes, and flush bacteria and other microorganisms and harmful chemicals from the skin. Other glands found in specialized areas include the mammary glands and the ceruminous glands. Mammary glands are found in the breasts and produce milk in lactating females. Ceruminous glands are found in the ear and produce cerumen or earwax that helps to protect the eardrum. Cerumen protects the ears by trapping foreign material, such as dust and airborne pathogens, that enter the ear canal. Cerumen is made continuously and slowly pushes older cerumen outward toward the exterior of the ear canal, where it falls out of the ear or is manually removed. The sebaceous glands and the apocrine sweat glands are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. These glands work simultaneously over the entire body. That is, when one gland begins secreting, they all secrete. The merocrine glands are controlled more independently and sweating occurs more locally. For example, a person who is nervous may have sweaty palms due to the secretions of the merocrine sweat glands. Sweat glands help the body to regulate body temperature. These glands work with the cardiovascular system to increase their secretions and cool the body through evaporation of sweat at the skin surface. The blood vessels dilate to bring increased blood supply to the skin surface, and the sweat glands release this increased fluid through their secretions and evaporation at the skin surface. Nails are accessory organs of the skin, made of sheets of hardened keratinocytes and found on the distal ends of the fingers and toes. Fingernails and toenails reinforce and protect the end of the digits and are used for scraping and manipulating small objects. There are three main parts of a nail: the root, the body, and the free edge. The nail root is the portion of the nail found under the surface of the skin. The nail body is the visible external portion of the nail. The free edge is the distal end portion of the nail that has grown beyond the end of the finger or toe. Nails grow from a deep layer of epidermal tissue known as the nail matrix, which surrounds the nail root. The stem cells of the nail matrix reproduce to form keratinocytes, which in turn produce keratin protein and pack it into tough sheets of hardened cells. The cells of keratinocytes form the hard nail root that slowly grows out of the skin and forms the nail body as it reaches the skin surface. The cells of the nail root and the body are pushed toward the distal end of the finger or toe by new cells being formed in the nail matrix. Under the nail body is a layer of epidermis and dermis known as the nail bed. The nail bed is pink in color due to the presence of capillaries that support the cells of the nail body. The proximal end of the nail near the root forms a whitish crescent shape known as the lunula, where a small amount of nail matrix is visible through the nail body. Around the proximal and lateral edges of the nail is the eponychium, a layer of epithelium that overlaps and covers the edge of the nail body. The eponychium helps to seal the edges of the nail to prevent infection of the underlying tissues. The body has the ability to regulate its core temperature somewhere between 98 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. When body temperature increases above normal, the skin is able to reduce body temperature through sweating and vasodilation. Sweat produced by the sweat glands delivers water to the surface of the body where it begins to evaporate. The evaporation of sweat absorbs heat and cools the body's surface. Vasodilation is the process through which smooth muscle lining the blood vessels in the dermis relax and allow more blood to enter the skin. Blood transports heat through the body, pulling heat away from the body's core and depositing it in the skin where it can radiate out of the body and into the external environment. When the body temperature falls below normal, the skin is able to raise body temperature through the contraction of erector pili muscles and through vasoconstriction. The follicles of hairs have small bundles of smooth muscle attached to their base called erector pili muscles. The erector pili form goosebumps by contracting to move the hair follicle and lifting the hair shaft upright from the surface of the skin. This movement results in more air being trapped under the hairs to insulate the surface of the body. Vasoconstriction is the process of smooth muscles in the walls of blood vessels in the dermis contracting to reduce the flow of blood to the skin. Vasoconstriction permits the skin to cool while blood stays in the body's core to maintain heat and circulation in the vital organs. One of the primary functions of the integumentary system is to act as a functional barrier from the environment. When damage occurs to the skin that injures the dermis as well as the epidermis, this barrier must be reestablished. Within hours of injury, keratinocytes respond to the injury. This repair occurs at the same time the inflammatory stage of healing occurs. Initially, bleeding will occur when the dermis has been injured by a cut or laceration. The epidermis is avascular, but the dermis has many blood vessels. The mast cells from the blood will trigger the inflammatory response, redness, swelling, and pain. After several hours, a scab will form over the surface of the skin where the injury occurred. Underneath the scab, the cells of the stratum basale migrate along the edges of the wound deep into the dermis and from both sides, closing off the site of injury from the rest of the integument and the hypodermis. Phagocytic cells from the blood remove debris. More cells continue to arrive due to the increased circulation that occurs with the inflammatory process. Around the edges, clotting begins and isolates the region. 1 week after the injury, in the deeper areas of the dermis, the scab below the newly formed epidermal layer is replaced by cells of the dermis through mitosis of the basal cells. These new dermal cells migrate over the meshwork that was produced by fibroblasts during the formation of the scab. Around this time, the phagocytes have finished cleaning up and their activity ends. The scab over the superficial area of the skin begins to break up as the underlying new epidermal barrier becomes more established. After several weeks, the superficial scab is shed and the epidermis is complete, once again creating a barrier to the environment. A shallow depression marks the injury site. Fibroblasts in the dermis continue to create scar tissue, and this will continue for weeks. The fibroblasts strengthen the scar tissue. The scar tissue created by the fibroblasts will gradually elevate the overlying epidermis to decrease the amount of depression. Many scars will fade over time. Very deep scars often remain, but fade over time, sometimes years. Many scars will fade and disappear over time. Very deep scars often remain, but fade somewhat over time. Occasionally, the scar tissue may overgrow, causing the epidermis to raise above the normal skin line, and a raised keloid may form. A keloid is a firm, rubbery, and sometimes shiny raised lesion of the skin. Keloids can vary in color from pink to red to dark brown, or they may be the person's skin color. Sometimes a keloid scar can cause severe itchiness and pain, but it is benign and not contagious. This ends Chapter 5, Module 3, Accessory Structures of the Integument and Injury Repair.